Bill O'Reilly's whole life changed with one phone call. After 20 years as Fox News' biggest star, making a lot of money and getting the most viewers of any cable news show, his whole world fell apart in minutes. Today, people who were there say what really happened that April morning and the secret choice that put an end to O'Reilly's rule for good. He was born in Manhattan, New York City, on September 10, 1949. If he were only 2 years old, his family would move to Long Island and live in the new neighborhood of Levittown. Bill often talked about how he grew up in Levittown as a working-class kid, but it turned out that his family lived in nearby Westbury, not Levittown. Because of this, some people said he was lying about his story to make it seem more real. Bill grew up in the 1950s in America that was becoming more and more like the suburbs. He learned a lot from the strict rules and tough teachers at St. Bridget Catholic School. He became known for having a strong attitude and working hard during these early years. He even met Billy Joel in high school. Joel went on to become a famous singer. Joel was a hood who hung out with kids who smoked and slicked their hair back, Bill felt. Bill, on the other hand, stayed out of danger by playing sports. Bill's first job after college was as a teacher. He came to Miami, Florida, in 1971 and taught history and English at Monsignor Edward Pace, a Catholic high school. He also helped the baseball team at school. In Miami, Bill taught and got to know regular people. He also learned how schools really work, something he would talk about in the future. But Bill had bigger plans even back then. While he was teaching, he went into the office of a nearby magazine and told the editor he wanted to be their new movie critic. Because he was so sure of himself, the editor gave him a chance. This was the start of Bill's career as a reporter. By 1973, he had made up his mind to quit teaching and follow his dream of working in the media. He went to Boston University to study news for the radio and TV. Bill did a lot of work at Boston University. He went to school and wrote for neighborhood papers like the Boston Phoenix. Howard Stern, who later became a famous radio host, was one of his students. They learned how different roads can lead from the same place when they were in school together. Bill was more interested in important news from the right, as Stern went on to change the way entertainment was done. Bill also did an internship at WBZ-TV, a local TV station, where he learned how the news was made. He earned his master's degree in writing in 1975. Bill got his first job in TV right after high school at WNEP-TV in Scranton, Pennsylvania. As a consumer troubleshooter, his job was to look into issues from people. He became famous for his tough, straight style thanks to this part. But his job wasn't all bad. A neighborhood show on Saturday nights called Uncle Ted's Ghoul School used his jokes. An interesting, fun part of his job that lots of people don't know about. Bill O'Reilly's first job was in local news, where he worked hard and always found a way to make things interesting. In 1977, he started working for WFA-TV. He became famous right away for reporting in a brave way. He found out that a judge was taking bribes on June 21st, 1977, and won an award for independent reporting for it. But his behavior made things worse. O'Reilly got into a big fight with his boss on July 4th, 1978, because his story about corruption was switched out for holiday news. That fight was remembered by everyone at the station. He moved to KMGH-TV in Denver in 1978. He covered an exciting plane attack at the Denver airport on November 2nd, 1979, for 12 hours straight. We gave him an Emmy Award for this. But things weren't easy for him there either. In February 1980, a female friend said he was harassing her. The case was later dropped, but it pointed to problems that would come up again in the future. After that, he went to work at WCBS-TV in New York in 1980. He looked into city marshals who were being dishonest, and the show ran on May 17, 1982, and won him another Emmy. It was impossible for O'Reilly to stay out of trouble. During a live show on August 1st, 1982, he said that the station wasn't doing enough to cover a political scandal. He was fired the next day for that. It was 1982 when O'Reilly started CBS News. His tasks were very hard. He wrote about the Civil War in El Salvador in 1983. On April 2nd, he talked about a town that had been completely destroyed by fighting, but video from later showed that the town was still there. He got to Argentina after the shooting stopped during the Falklands War. He said that on June 16, 1982, during a protest in Buenos Aires, he saw guards fire live bullets into the crowd. Some reporters there didn't agree, saying that only rubber shots were used and no one was hurt or killed. In 1985, O'Reilly got into another fight with CBS. This time, he said that Dan Rather had used his tape without giving him credit. And fight broke out over this, and O'Reilly quit CBS. He started working for ABC News in 1986. Trouble with the Challenger space shuttle was his first big story. He reported on it from Cape Canaveral on January 28, 1986, and his emotional coverage won him an Emmy Award across the country. He was at the Berlin Wall when it began to fall in 1987. He got on top of the wall to celebrate with the people in the area, which earned him another Emmy. Soon after, though, he went to cover a protest in Chile and said he was in a war zone with real bullets flying around. Later, it was said that the protest was mostly calm and that only tear gas was used, criticizing the choices the network made. He quit ABC on June 30, 1989, after a big fight over how they covered the Exxon Valdez oil spill. In the autumn of that year, O'Reilly took over as host of Inside Edition. He took over on October 9, 1989, and by 1992, it was the most popular news show in the country. When he talked to Joey Buttafuoco in 1992, it was a big deal. When Amy Fisher was in trouble, people who didn't like it called it trashy news, but over 11 million people watched it. In 1993, when O'Reilly talked about the Los Angeles riots in a racist way, he also got in trouble. He said sorry, but it made people dislike him. People who watched the show had grown by more than 50% by the time he left in 1995 to go to Harvard. He learned a lot there that helped him become one of the most famous and controversial people in media at Fox News. It was a big change for Bill O'Reilly in 1996. He started working for the brand new Fox News channel on October 7th. He was 47 years old at the time. At that time, CNN was the most watched cable news network, so it seemed risky to start a conservative news station. As the CEO of Fox News, Roger Ailes wanted O'Reilly to be one of the main hosts. Fox News was started by Rupert Murdoch. Some people didn't trust O'Reilly in the news because he was the host of the tabloid-style show Inside Edition. Ailes thought O'Reilly had something special, though. He could connect with people and make them argue. Fox News only had 17 million viewers when it first started, a lot less than CNN. His first job paid him $1 million a year and was in a small workshop in New York City. Things were not easy in the beginning. There were technology issues, and O'Reilly had to quickly think of what to say again when something went wrong. But his show, The O'Reilly Report, became famous very quickly. After 6 months, 228,000 people watched it every night. That was very important for a news service. The first episode of the show ran at 6 p.m. and focused on looking at news. It became clear to O'Reilly that people liked his strong views, so he started to share them more. The show changed its name to The O'Reilly Factor in 1998. An O'Reilly friend came up with the name, saying that O'Reilly was what made the show special. The show changed to 8 p.m. around this time slot, going up against Larry King Live on CNN. In 2004, O'Reilly first used the term caution, "You are about to enter the no-spin zone." It quickly became a well-known phrase. Another famous part of the show's start was Talking Points Memo, where O'Reilly talked about the biggest news stories of the day. There were 16 years that The O'Reilly Factor was the most watched TV news show. It got there in 2001 and stayed there. The show's best year was 2009, when 3.1 million people watched every night. Also, O'Reilly's pay went up. By 2016, he was making $20 million a year. The way O'Reilly talked to people made him stand out from other shows. He was more calm at first, but he quickly learned that arguments that got heated drew more people. It was well known by 1998 that O'Reilly gave tough talks. In 2003, when he talked to Jeremy Glick, whose father died in the 9/11 attacks, it became one of his most talked about events. Because things were getting so tense, O'Reilly turned off Glick's microphone. These kinds of events caused a lot of debate, but they also got people to pay attention. O'Reilly had his own ways of doing things. When he thought someone was dodging his questions, he cut them off, spoke over them, and even waved them off with his hands. Some people didn't like his way, but it worked. His aggressive style was so well known by 2009 that studies even kept track of how often he used methods like calling people names. The show kept getting better and better. In 1997, 297,000 people watched it every night. It was almost twice as high by 1998. People watched the show even more after the 9/11 attacks. In November 2001, 2.3 million people watched The O'Reilly Factor instead of 1.9 million people watched Larry King Live on CNN. After that, Fox News was the best television news show. Fox was making more money than CNN and MSNBC put together by 2006. People who watched O'Reilly weren't just conservatives. About 30% of the people who watched him were Democrats or independents. When it was at its best, the show brought in about $100 million a year for Fox News and ads. On September 9, 2002, Bill O'Reilly began hosting The Radio Factor. The radio show lasted 2 hours. That played every weekday and became a huge hit very quickly. 400 radio stations played it for more than 3.26 million people. O'Reilly brought his sharp, confrontational style from TV to the radio, which got people interested in the show. He often got into fights with guests and calls. In 2004, there was a speaker who said he supported war, which stood out. O'Reilly yelled, "You want the terrorists to win," and then hung up. It was all over the internet, and in just a few days, millions of people watched it on YouTube. There were problems with the show, even though it was very famous. People were upset when O'Reilly said things about a sexual assault victim in 2006, and some sponsors stopped supporting the show. It stayed strong, though, and was ranked as one of the top 10 radio shows in the country. It was making $10 million a year by 2008. O'Reilly also added short radio shows called Radio Factor Minute, which were broadcast on 600 stations and made him even more well-known. There were 1,445 episodes of the show before it ended in 2009, and changed talk radio a lot. He did more than just talk on the radio. He wrote books that were huge hits. It was his first big book, and it was called The O'Reilly Factor: The Good, the Bad, and the Completely Ridiculous in American Life. It came out in 2000 and was a hit for 14 weeks. Then, in 2011, he wrote Killing Lincoln, the first book in his Killing series. In 3 months, 1 million copies were sold. As the series went on, each new book, like Killing Kennedy, Killing Jesus, and Killing Patton, became a huge hit. The books had sold more than 8.5 million copies by 2015, but not everyone liked them. In Killing Jesus, O'Reilly said that the idea came to him in the middle of the night in a dream. Some people told him they liked him, while others made fun of him. Following the killing of Kennedy, O'Reilly said he was at a man's suicide, but this claim was later called into question. The books kept selling, though, and by 2014, Killing Patton had sold 1.5 million copies, making it the best-selling nonfiction book of the year. O'Reilly also started making a lot of money as a public speaker. You could make up to $100,000 for one event. His speaking trips, like the Bold Fresh Tour with Dennis Miller in 2010, brought in more than $10 million. But trouble followed him everywhere. He caused a stir in 2016 when he said that some people wanted to destroy the Electoral College to take power from the white elite. He shocked people on another tour in 2015 when he said that Al-Qaeda had a list of people they wanted to kill. He went on a $7 million speaking tour with Donald Trump after leaving Fox News in 2021. The tour made him $7 million, but he was criticized for not selling enough tickets and being too soft on Trump. One of the most well-known ones happened on Inside Edition on September 13, 1993. A problem with the script made things hard to understand. O'Reilly didn't know what it meant to play us out, which meant to end the show with a Sting song. With each take, he got more and more angry until he finally lost it. He yelled, "Fuck it, we're gonna do it live." It was like hearing a Hoover in his voice as his face went red. The 17-person group was shocked. Mary Duffy, the director, later said it was scary. That video clip was kept secret for 15 years, but in 2008, it was made public. Over 13 million people watched it on YouTube in just 1 week. We'll Do It Live turned into a meme and was even used on products. In the end, O'Reilly said that he had 47 takes that day, and that was because of technology problems. But many people still remember that time about him. O'Reilly wasn't just known for losing his cool. He also got into a lot of fights in public. Cody Olbermann from MSNBC was on one of the longer ones. In 2003, Olbermann made fun of something O'Reilly said about World War II. They then went on to attack each other on their shows for 7 years. Olbermann called O'Reilly the worst person in the world 42 times after O'Reilly called MSNBC names. Al Franken and O'Reilly got into a fight after Franken wrote a book against O'Reilly. In 2003, they got into a fight at a book fair in front of 100 people. O'Reilly told them to shut up because they had already used up their 35 minutes. Fox News sued Franken because of this fight, but the case didn't go anywhere. He also had problems with politics. One well-known event happened in 2009 during a talk with Barney Frank. They had a fight about the financial disaster, and O'Reilly said Frank was lying. Frank replied, "The problem with your show is that you go on rants, and to answer you, I have to look just as bad as you." A lot of people watched the video online. The way O'Reilly did interviews also caused a lot of debate. He talked to Jeremy Glick in 2003, whose dad died on September 11th. O'Reilly was mad that Glick had signed an ad against the war. During the interview, O'Reilly yelled at him, told him to be quiet, and then turn off the mic. A lot of people were angry and said it was insulting to the son of a 9/11 victim. Another time, in 2004, Terry Gross of NPR talked to O'Reilly about his fight with Al Franken. O'Reilly said she was being rude, so the interview was cut short. He called it a hatchet job. O'Reilly seemed angry and unwilling to deal with tough questions during these times. He also used surprise journalism, in which his team caught people off guard and talked to them. Because Amanda Tickle had written something bad about O'Reilly, his producer approached her near her home in 2009. In the end, she said it was scary. A lot of people called this harassment, but O'Reilly said it was necessary to hold people responsible. In 2004, a writer for the O'Reilly Factor named Andrea Macrass said that Bill O'Reilly had harassed her. She said that he made unwanted moves and harassed her for 4 years. Macrass worked for O'Reilly from 2000 to the beginning of 2004, and then for a short time again in late 2004. In her lawsuit, she talked about his disturbing behavior, such as explicit phone calls where he tried to get her to talk about her sexual dreams. She even said she had videos of some of these calls. Falafel thing was what O'Reilly said he was going to use on her in one call, but it looked like he meant a loofah. It was funny in the news that this strange detail turned into a joke. Macri also said that O'Reilly called her late at night and sounded like he was touching himself. He told strange stories about himself, like how he lost his virginity to a flight attendant when he was 33 years old. He is said to have offered a threesome with Macri and her friend at a work dinner. She said that O'Reilly scared her by telling her that he would treat her badly if she ever reported him. O'Reilly and Fox News sued Macri and her lawyer right before she made her case public. They said she was trying to get $60 million to keep quiet. Both sides fought hard in public, which made the case even more heated and messy. People all over the country talked about abuse at work and the power of well-known people like O'Reilly. 2 weeks after they sued, O'Reilly and Macri came to an agreement. At the time, the amount she got was huge, about $9 million. As part of the deal, Macri agreed not to talk about the case in public. Everybody said there was nothing wrong, but O'Reilly still rejected everything. He said he only gave in to keep his family from being embarrassed. He said on his show that people were attacking him wrongly because he was famous. This wasn't O'Reilly's last case. On April 1st, 2017, the New York Times released an investigation that showed Bill O'Reilly's history of sexual harassment settlements. Emily Steele and Michael S. Schmidt, 2 reporters, worked on this story for months and won a Pulitzer Prize for their hard work. They talked to a lot of current and past Fox News employees and had to work around the fact that the women involved signed non-disclosure agreements. Even with these problems, they found that between 2002 and 2016, O'Reilly paid at least $13 million to settle 5 claims. The biggest was $9 million given to Andrea Macrass in 2004. She was a director who said O'Reilly made rude phone calls and comments. In 2016, Juliette Huddy also got a payment, whom she said O'Reilly tried to date her and got angry when she turned him down. In other cases, O'Reilly was rude and insulting, like when Rachel Whitley Bernstein sued him for $1.5 million in 2002, saying he yelled at her in front of her coworkers. These claims painted a troubling picture of how O'Reilly behaved. Andrea Macrass, for example, said he called her inappropriately and told her bad things would happen if she reported him. In the case of Juliette Huddy, she was accused of revenge for her job. Other women said they were verbally abused at work, which made it a toxic place to be. Even though these accusations were very serious, Fox News at first supported O'Reilly. In a statement made on the same day as the New York Times story, the network's parent company stressed how important he was to the channel. They said they had talked about the claims with O'Reilly, but they put it in the form of personal issues that he had fixed. The public's reaction was quick and strong. Within a few days, more than 50 big companies, such as Mercedes-Benz and BMW, took their ads off of the O'Reilly factor. The number of national ads for the show dropped from 33 to just 7 by April 6th. After making their decisions, many companies put out comments saying they couldn't support the show under the current conditions. It had a huge effect on the money. Fox News lost a lot of money from ads because many companies pulled theirs from both O'Reilly's show and the network as a whole. There were also protests. There were a lot of people outside of Fox News' New York City offices on April 18, 2017, calling for O'Reilly to be fired. Activist groups put together petitions, and famous people joined the talk. Online campaigns put pressure on sponsors to stay away from the scandal, which hurt Fox News' finances even more. The O'Reilly factor, with an interesting news story. He said he was going on holiday and would be back on April 24th. At first, this seemed normal, but it happened at a time when sexual harassment scandals were getting worse. Right away, people started to wonder about the timing. The New York Times had just a few days before said that O'Reilly and Fox News had paid $13 million over the years to settle claims against him. Because of this story, more than 50 advertisers, including big names like Mercedes-Benz and BMW, pulled their ads from his show, which made Fox News the most money. After losing more than a dozen sponsors in just one day, O'Reilly made his speech. There were more signs that this trip wasn't like any other. O'Reilly had a break like this last year, but this time it felt different. Sources say that he had planned to come back on April 18th, but stayed away longer as the situation got worse. For many, this trip was just an excuse for Fox News to think about what they should do next. The Murdoch family, who bought Fox News, had to make a tough choice behind the scenes. The father, Rupert Murdoch, wanted to keep O'Reilly because he was doing so well. But James and Lachlan Murdoch, his sons, thought O'Reilly should leave. There were more and more claims, and marketers were running away. Because of O'Reilly's deal, things got even more complicated. Fox had renewed his deal for $25 million a year just a few months before, in February 2017. The deal said they could fire him if new accusations came up, but if they did, they might have to pay him a lot of money. Protesters gathered outside of Fox's offices while the Murdochs talked. A plane even flew over carrying a sign calling for O'Reilly to be fired. At the same time, Fox hired a law company to look into the claims. When it came out that O'Reilly had quietly paid $32 million to settle another harassment claim in January 2017, that was the breaking point. Even Rupert Murdoch was shocked by this. This was hard for O'Reilly to defend because of the size of the settlement and the fact that it was kept secret during contract talks. 21st Century Fox said on April 19, 2017, that Bill O'Reilly would not be coming back to Fox News. It was a short statement, only 42 words, that said O'Reilly and the company had agreed to part ways after carefully looking over the claims. This was the end of O'Reilly's 21-year run at Fox News, where he was the network's face and got the most viewers. Just in the first 3 months of 2017, ads on his show brought in $46.2 million, so his leaving was a big deal. The statement was made at a smart time. It took place right before a Fox board meeting, and O'Reilly was still on holiday in Italy at the time. The same day, O'Reilly was seen shaking hands with Pope Francis in St. Peter's Square. He didn't seem to know that he had been fired at the time. When Fox got back to New York, it quickly changed its schedule. Tucker Carlson took over the 8 p.m. show on O'Reilly. The 5 moved to 9 p.m. In the evening that same day, O'Reilly put out a statement protecting himself. He said he was proud of his 20 years at Fox News and said the accusations against him were not true. Instead of saying sorry or addressing any specific claims, he said that he was the victim of false accusations. After a few days, he started a podcast and told people that he thought the truth would finally come out. In October 2017, after months of being angry, O'Reilly lost it. He told someone that he was angry at God for not keeping him safe from the scandal. He said what he and his family had been through was terrible, but he didn't seem to want to take blame for what was said. Even though he had been fired 6 months before, O'Reilly was still stubborn. He blamed others for his fall and was having a hard time getting over the scandal.